Thank you so very much for being a part of the Requiem Renaissance here in the Diocese of Missouri. Today, part of my job is to talk a little bit about adaptive change and what that means for us as a diocese, for you as a congregations and communities of faith that make up the diocese, and for us as individual followers of Jesus. This begins with the understanding that this is God's work and our hands, that we are called in this time and in this place to do the work that God has called us to do. And we begin with the premise that everything that you need for your community to thrive, to live into God's dream, you already have. Many of us spend a lot of time thinking about and stressing about, and I would dare say worrying about the things that we have no control of or the things that we don't have. But in God's economy, that scarcity is replaced with an abundance. You already have all the gifts that you need to do God's work. You already have all the hands that you need to begin to do God's work. And so what we will look at a little bit today is how do we use those gifts and skills that we already have to adapt to a new reality, to a new and changed world, and I would dare say a new and changed church. So what exactly is adaptive change? Well, there's a difference between technical fix and adaptive change. Technical fix are those defined by solving a problem using knowledge and experts, where adaptive change is about learning and relearning and new learning of how to be in the environment that we find ourselves. Adaptive change then comes from collective intelligence of the church and church leaders and its members, that together we can learn to find new solutions to the problems and challenges that we face as church. Jesus in the Gospels often employed adaptive change. What he did was, instead of saying, here's something that's broken, let me just fix it, he asked deeper questions. Did you know that Jesus asked more questions than he ever answered? In the Gospels, Jesus asked some 207 questions and answered exactly 5. I think there's wisdom in that, because adaptive change invites us to ask the question. But Jesus in the Gospel of John said these words, "I assure you that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it can only be a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." What he's talking about is adaptive change. What he's talking about is that sometimes in order for us to move further forward where God is calling us, we must let some things go and adjust to our new reality. Adaptive change does not ask, what do we fix or how do we fix this? Adaptive change asks the question, how do we move further forward into God's economy and answer the questions and challenges that are before us? Adaptive change then means that we must adapt and evolve and find new solutions to the problems and challenges that we face as church. I love the quote from General Eric Shimsky. I use it often. When I was in a parish, I had it printed and put up on the wall as you walked out the door, and that quote says, if you don't like change, you're going to like being irrelevant even less. And you know how we as Episcopalians just love change, said no one ever. We don't often like change, but I think we would like being irrelevant even less. And so the challenge for us as the church is, how do we adapt to a new reality? So there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is church attendance, church giving, all things church, not just here in the Diocese of Missouri, but across Christianity, seems to be in decline. We have lost members. We have seen Sunday schools shrink. We have seen church budgets become smaller. We have seen the general decline of the church. And Requiem Renaissance is intended for us to have hard conversations about what that decline means, both for us as individual communities of faith, as a diocese, as the Episcopal Church, and ultimately as followers of Jesus. The bad news is that Christianity in the West is in decline. The good news is we serve a God who is in the business of resurrection. You see, most of the time I think we want resurrection without death, without crucifixion. And as one more learned than I once said, resurrection without crucifixion is just fiction. We need to experience those times of letting go, of letting some things die, so that God can create something new, that we can be resurrected. That is the good and bad news of what we face. The other thing that I think we must pay attention to is that we are not God. God is the one who does resurrection. God is the one who grows the church, not you and I. It is far above your pay grade and certainly above mine to grow this church. What we are called to do is to align who and where we are with where God is calling us to be and adapt to our new reality. So here are some hard facts about our new reality. Church attendance is down. The pandemic has showed us that in many ways people were longing for an opportunity to do something different, to engage differently. The fastest growing section in libraries and booksellers today are spirituality and self-help. What it says to me is that there are folks out there who are yearning for connection, who are yearning for that deeper spiritual practice that connects them to something far greater than themselves. What it means for us as the church is that we must lean heavily on that thing we call spirituality. It means we must adapt to a new reality where denominational loyalty is on the far decline, or the fast decline rather, where the things that we expected in the past are no longer true. How then do we adapt to this new reality? The question then for us as a community, for you as individual communities, is to go about your neighborhoods, your towns, your city, and ask the question, what is God up to in this community? And then align what you are looking to do, the gifts that you have been given, with the things that you see, with where God might be calling you. It means that we must get out of our own way and be able to think collectively in a creative and a different way to respond to the needs of those who are not in the church just yet. There's a wonderful quote from Greg Jones that goes, "Our end is also our beginning, because we are called to bear witness to the redemptive work of Christ, who is the Word that created the world. We are the carriers of that which has gone before us, so we can bear witness faithfully to the future." So that we can bear witness faithfully to the future. I think that is at the heart of adaptive change. It is recognizing that those things that we do are not about what's going to happen right here and right now. It is not a silver bullet that is somehow going to fix our churches. It is an adaptive opportunity for us to evolve into where God is calling us, so that we can be faithful witnesses to the future that we do not know. My grandmother often said to my brother and I growing up, "I may not know what the future holds, but I know the one who holds the future." You and I know the one who holds the future. The question is, are we willing to let the one who holds the future actually hold the future? Or are we so concerned about the future, so afraid of the future, that we're not willing to put our trust, our hope, our longings, our dreams in the hands of the one who called us first into being? Our world is often yearning for good news, and as we adapt to the different reality, we have to adapt how we share that good news. But to be able to share good news means that we must be rooted so deeply in the things of who we are, but more importantly, of whose we are. We must be rooted and grounded in the gospel of Jesus. If we are afraid to talk about Jesus, if we are afraid to share the good news that we have, if we are not willing to walk out our doors and invite others into the good news that we have, then we are wasting our time. We are called to go out and share and be good news, and we must adapt how we do and share that good news. So we, in this time, in this program, in this process of Requiem or Renaissance, must ask ourselves some very deep questions and being rooted to Jesus. Here are some questions for you to ponder. Are you praying for your community and for those around us? Are you planting Jesus in your interactions with others outside the church? Are you inviting people who don't know Jesus to the table? Are we the church beyond our walls, or are we just church on Sunday mornings? Are we using our gifts to serve others than to serve ourselves? Are we hopeful for the future that God is calling us? And last but not least, are we willing to allow God to multiply us to grow? Or are we comfortable being as we are? I think once we can begin to answer those questions honestly and faithfully, that we can then be prepared to go out and be rooted and grounded in Jesus and share the good news which we've been commanded to share. I believe that God supplies the need. God gives us everything that we need. So what is it that we get to adapt during this time? How do we experience that adaptive change? There are a few things in research that have told us that these are the things that adaptive communities often express as their deepest desires and highest characteristics. Here they are. Empowering leadership. Do we have leaders that empower others to share their gifts? Gift-based ministry. Are we encouraging people who have gifts in different areas to share their gifts in ways that are life-giving and allows them to be passionate about what they do? Passionate spirituality. Are we taking those times of rest, of going deep, of listening to our heart and listening for God's whisper in the world around us? Effective structures. Do we have the things in place that allow us to do the work that God has called us to do? Inspiring worship. Is our worship service sending us out with a pep in our step and inviting us to be Christ in the world on Mondays and not just Sundays? Holistic small groups. Are we a part of groups that allow us to go deeper together? Need-oriented evangelism. Are we looking around our communities and asking what are the needs and how can we be helpful? How can we be Christ? How can we plant Christ in those places of hurt and division in our communities? And then last but not least, loving relationships. Do we show love for one another, for our community, for our faith beyond the walls? Those are the gifts that God has already given each and every single one of your communities. The challenge is to orient those gifts to where God is calling us. So I invite you to take a moment to watch this video that will come up. It's about 5 minutes, and it is The Bridges of Meghalaya. Some of you may have seen it before, and some of you may not. But I invite you to pay close attention, and as you're watching, to think on these questions. What surprised you most about their solution to their changed reality? What did you notice that was different, that stood out for you? How could the church learn to adapt to a different reality like the villagers did? And where do you see similarities or differences in the life of the church? As you embark on this journey, as you continue along this path, as you walk with Jesus and your siblings, I encourage you to pay close attention to where God might be calling you. that collectively we can adapt to the changed realities of church today, and that we can bear witness faithfully to the future that God is calling us. God's work, our hands in you.